Hey guys, it's Cameron, my review for the latest season of American Vandal. And what American Vandal Season 2 is essentially about is we center away from the public school that Peter and Sam attend and focus more on this private school called St. Bernardine. And basically there is this character known as the Turd Burglar who has been committing a lot of really disgusting crimes involving poop. The latest one involving this lemonade that they put laxatives in that caused pretty much everyone to have explosive diarrhea and things like that. And there's this character known as Kevin McLean who has been accused of being the Turd Burglar and having this crime known as the Brownout. And basically most of the season is Peter and Sam trying their best to exonerate Kevin, but also trying to figure out who the Turd Burglar may be. So, American Vandal overall, obviously, I was hyped for this season. You know, I really loved Season 1. It was easily one of the biggest surprises of last year. I expected to like it, but not love it as much as I do. And what I loved about Season 1 is that it wasn't just a satire on, you know, true crime documentaries. It really ended up being a very good exploration of high school in general and how we tend to put people into boxes. And I think they just handled that so well. So when the trailer for Season 2 dropped, I was a little bit worried that this season was going to rely a little bit more on comedy and it wasn't going to take itself nearly as seriously as Season 1 did. Now, Season 1 admittedly did have a lot of really silly and stupid moments in there, but it still did take itself seriously. It still stayed pretty grounded. I was worried that Season 2 wasn't going to be like that. And honestly, after watching Season 2, I really did not have too much to worry about. This season is almost just as good as Season 1. It is still a very intelligent show that still somehow continues to amaze me. And I'm just getting into it right now, starting off with the cast. And like Season 1, that is definitely one of the best things about the season, mainly because once again, everyone just feels like a regular high school student. Once again, I think that the main two actors, Tyler Alvarez and Griffin Gluck, both do a very good job as Peter and Sam. They don't have as much to do in this season as they did in Season 1, which I'll get to a little bit later, but I do think they did a really good job of what they have. These two characters are a lot of fun to watch. We do enjoy watching them, you know, solve this mystery, really figure out what was going on, and I really did enjoy them throughout the season overall. It was cool to see them return, and I definitely did enjoy seeing them return here. But it's really the new cast that I think really did impress me here, particularly Travis Trope as the character Kevin McLean. I thought was phenomenal. I really loved him in this role because, of course, sure, he is very similar to Dylan in which they're trying to do what they can to exonerate him of what they did, but Kevin is a little bit more complex than Dylan was. Kevin is someone who he used to be very popular, he used to be very well liked in the school, and since he's become a bit of a joke. However, he doesn't necessarily, he doesn't necessarily hate the fact that he's become a joke. In fact, he's kind of embraced that, and getting into who Kevin really was, just the kind of person that he was. He also has a very interesting story with, his former best friend named Trevor. I thought the character of Tanner, I really liked, where they were going with him, but he really did a great job in the show. He has quite a wide range, and I really did love what he did here. I don't know if he topped what, I don't know if he necessarily topped what Jimmy Tatro was able to do with the character of Dylan, but he has some really great stand-up moments, particularly in the back half of the season, and I really love what he was able to do here. I really love getting into this character, and I think he did a fantastic job this season. Someone else who was very good was Melvin Gregg as the character of Demarcus Tillman, who, once again, Demarcus Tillman's kind of similar to Dylan, where he just seems like this athletic kid who seems to pretty much have it all, who doesn't really seem to have many problems in the world, but in reality, he is very complex. There's a lot more to Demarcus than you would really expect. I really did like getting into who he really was. I think he did a very good job in this show. At first, he's a lot of fun to watch with the way he does present himself and the way that he's kind of his privileges are pretty much limitless at this point. Like, he can pretty much do whatever he wants in the school, and I really like getting into that, but there's a lot more to Demarcus than expected, and I really love getting into that character as well. He really did do a great job. Really, everyone in the show does a fantastic job this season. I really love Taylor Dearden. It's cool to see her back from Sweet Vicious. There's a lot of great actors sprinkled throughout the show, just like the first season. There's a lot of great talent here, way far better than I think the acting really needed to be, but everyone really, I thought, was very much on point. No one really felt like they were acting. It very much felt like real high school students, and that's really when the show works best, and I still think they continue to excel when it comes to the casting, because I think really everyone did a fantastic job. But now I really want to get to the directing and the writing, because like I said, going into the season, that was my main concern. I was worried that they were going to focus a little bit less on the characters, because season 1 was primarily a character study. Like, as silly as it was, it very much was a character study, and I was worried that season 2 was going to focus more on this gimmick of how many times can we say the word poop? How many times can we make all these really stupid shit puns? You know, how many times can we really do that? And that is not at all the case with this season. I think this season is just as well done tonally as the first one was. It still has a biting sense of satire to it. It never takes itself too seriously, but it does do a good job of, you know, keeping things pretty, you know, playing it straight and making sure the story does stay grounded in reality. As ridiculous as this premise really is, you can understand where they're really going with it. There's a lot more to these characters than expected, and when we get in the back half, things actually do get quite dark, and I really love that the show wasn't afraid to go there. I was thinking, again, that I was just very worried that they weren't going to be able to go to the places that season 1 did, and honestly, I think they kind of topped it here, and I'll get to them when we get to spoilers, obviously, but I really do think they kind of topped it, and I really did love the tone that they were able to do through this show. It was very fun, it was very addicting, but it was also really compelling as it went on, and I think they did a very good job with that. The writing in the show, again, I think is just spectacular, because the premise, yes, it's ridiculous. The fact that there is this turd burglar, and he is making everyone shits, and, you know, everyone, you know, there's all this, there's all this, you know, there's like poop on the floor and things like that. Like, sure, it is a really dumb plot, but again, I don't know how they do it, but you just find yourself getting really invested in the mystery of the turd burglar. The turd burglar, you know, themselves is actually very fascinating. The way they operate, what they're really trying to do, the message they're really trying to send, it is actually quite fascinating. And I can't believe I'm saying that for a simple crime of just students defecating, on floors, but that's where we are. And I think the show just does a very good job with really showing that they have no limits, and showing that even the most ridiculous stuff can actually really work out, and they did a very good job with that. But again, you're really into these characters. You care about Kevin, you care about Demarcus. We really do focus on these two, who they really are, how they operate, how they're tied to this situation, you know, the various things that they're doing. There's a lot of clues they give you throughout the show, just like they did in the first season, and this really only, you know, you know, only gives us more of a reason to care for these characters, because you really do dive deep into who they really are, and the story of them trying to exonerate Kevin is even bigger than it was in season 1, because in season 1, Dylan did not have as many people behind him. Dylan did not have a lot of people on his side, because he was suspended from school throughout the most of it, and sure, Kevin is on house arrest, but he does have someone who is actually representing him, and that is Chloe, and this character of Chloe, I also really like getting into. There's a really good story between him, Chloe, and his friend Tanner, and this, you know, this sort of, you know, this sort of situation that ended up happening between them, and I really like getting into that story as well. And again, when you oppose that to what's going on with Demarcus, this kid who seemingly seems to have it all, you can tell that there definitely isn't something right there. You can tell that there definitely is more going on, and I think they do a very good job with that overall. And even some of the supporting characters, you know, they give you a lot of breadcrumbs throughout this series, and some of the characters where you're like, why is this important? Again, they tie it back, and it makes a lot more sense. You're like, oh, now I get why they're doing that. And again, it's very similar to season 1, where there's a lot of things that seem like you know what's going on, and you absolutely don't. And even more so this season, they directly mislead you, and they do such a great job with that. There's so many points where I thought I knew what was going on, and I just didn't, and I really did love what this show was trying to do this season. The show, like I said, is going to some even darker places this season, getting a little bit deeper with its characterization. I think they did a very good job with that here overall, especially because the story itself on paper is really dumb, and you got to do a lot to win someone over, but goddamn, they really do it. And I can't believe how invested I'm getting into a story about someone who literally just put laxatives in lemonade and all these various sort of poop crimes that they did. It sounds really dumb, but trust me, it's actually really compelling. And the way that they go about this mystery, you just can't help but find yourself wrapped in on it. You know, you really do want to know what's going on. You really want to, you know, solve this mystery. And again, they really do lay a lot of clues as to what's going on, and it makes things a lot more interesting to watch. It honestly is very compelling, and it's probably one of the most addicting shows on TV right now. It's a show that when you binge it, you're probably going to want to binge almost the entire season because it is very addicting in that sense, and they did a very good job with that overall here. Now, I can't really say what the message of season 2 is without, you know, delving into spoilers, but I will say, remember how in season 1 they made it seem like this was just a story of a kid who was drawing dicks, and in reality, it was really about putting all these kids into boxes and how we often label people and how everyone is not what they seem to be. Well, they do something similar with that this season, and it's not really what you might expect. You know, you think this season, like I said, they're not taking themselves as seriously, and then as the season goes on, you start to realize what the theme actually is pointing towards, and once they do eventually dive into it, it actually is very fascinating. I think the show, you know, it grows even deeper when it comes to its initial message, and again, it never feels preachy. It never feels like it's banging you over the head with this. It feels like they have a very good idea of what they want people to take away from this. But again, they don't try to make it seem like, you know, they don't try to make it seem like you're dumb. They try to do their best to, you know, relay this message to you, but they don't do it in a way that comes across as preachy, and I just think this show does a very good job of riding the line between giving you words to live by, but also not making it just a message show. There's a lot more to it than that, and I think they did a very good job with that this season. The only thing for me that holds this season back from saying it's as good as season 1, and cinematography-wise as well, the show continues to improve a lot. In the context of the show, there's an even bigger budget now because Sam and Peter are now basically a lot more famous than they were in season 1, so they're able to have a much bigger budget, and you really do feel that throughout the show. Just the way the interviews are done, again, nothing about it ever feels fake. It feels like this is a real documentary show that you could be watching, and they do such a great job with that. Even though you know it's not real, at points you forget it. At points you forget these are not real people. And again, it's just because of how in-depth they really do go with these individuals, and they do such an incredible job with that overall. And again, I think the cinematography is really great here. There's a lot of really great audio visuals, just like there were in the first season, and I really did love that. The score, I really did enjoy. The pacing to every episode is really good. The show never really felt like it wasn't paced all that well. Every episode really did fly by for me. Every episode had something interesting going on, and that's something I really did love about this season overall. So between everything I'm saying about the deeper characterizations and the much more complex storyline that's going on, you probably think that I would say this is better than season 1. Well, not exactly. And there's really only one reason for that. And it's not a huge thing. It's really not a huge thing. But it does involve the characters of Peter and Sam. I really like these characters a lot. I think Griffin, Gluck, and Tyler Alvarez play them very well. I think they're very compelling. I think they're very easy to identify with. I did like that similar to the last season, they're not always agreeing with things. But, you know how in season 1, a lot of what these two characters did had some sort of ripple effect on them, and a lot of the people in their class started to view them differently, and the story became less about Dylan and actually more about the ramifications of, you know, the repercussions of what this really does to Sam and Peter. Well, that doesn't really happen this season. Sam and Peter's role this season is to make the documentary and to solve the mystery, and we don't really go that much deeper than that. And for me, I just wanted a little bit more, especially because very early on the season, they allude to the fact that these two are basically celebrities now. They have a much bigger fan base, and I kept waiting for that to come into play. I kept waiting for them to maybe get stopped by a fan, or maybe get to the point where their fame starts to change their identity, or maybe it starts to turn them against each other. I mean, I was really hoping they do just a little bit more with these two characters, and unfortunately they just don't. They're really just here to solve this mystery, and I just wanted a little bit more with them overall. And maybe it's just asking for too much, but for me, I loved how in-depth we really did get with them over Season 1, and Season 2 just pales in comparison when it comes to them. And considering how in-depth every other character is, Peter and Sam just unfortunately pale in comparison, and we just don't get that in-depth focus that I really did want with them. Even if they would have given them maybe just like a little side plot of maybe someone that they were talking to, like let's say Chloe. Let's say Chloe was like a big fan of them, and she, you know, watched the first season and really loved what they did. And maybe, you know, they start to realize, you know, Chloe's kind of a crazed fan. That would have been a very interesting narrative. Granted, it might have been a little bit complicated, but that never really comes up this season. There's never a point where you see someone, you're like, oh, I loved Season 1. I love American Vandal. We don't really get that, and I feel like they kind of brought that up for nothing. Like, sure, it does address a plot point in Season 1 with how they were able to get the quality that they were able to, but in general, to me at least, it just felt like they didn't do as much with them in Season 1 as they did in Season 2, and I just wanted a little bit more with Peter and Sam overall. Other than that, this season is fantastic. There's really not many other issues going on, but that really is the thing that does hold it back for me overall. Also, I will admit, at first, some of the characters weren't all that memorable. There were some characters that maybe could have had just a little bit more to do here and there, but as the season goes on, almost every single character does leave some sort of impression on you. Every single character has more going on than you'd expect them to, similar to the first season, and I really do love the way they kept it up here. Those are my favorite things about Season 1, and they only really deepen the narrative in Season 2, and I think they did a fantastic job with that overall. But with everything out of the way technical-wise, I really do want to get into the spoilers for this season because there is a lot to talk about, even more so, I think, than Season 1, so we're just going to jump into it. First of all, I want to talk about the initial message of this season because it's kind of hard to tell at first what this season is really trying to do. For a while, you think it's just going to be like Season 1, where it's like, oh, we put all these different characters into boxes, which that's something that I really did enjoy a lot. And for a while, that is what they were kind of doing, you know, just like Season 1, we see very early on that Kevin doesn't really care about the fact that he's bullied. In fact, he's kind of embraced it, and that was such a cool idea. I love that he actually wasn't upset that they were bullying him. He actually was embracing because he started a lot of the stuff that has since become sort of, you know, an insult to Kevin. I thought that was honestly a really cool idea, and for a while, it seems like that's where they're going with the season. The same exact message as Season 1. And then we really start to get into the main narrative that the character of Jenna was catfished, and that there was this girl that she thought was in love with her, and that she made her do a lot of the one of the poop crimes that was going on, and the only reason she did it is because this girl was going to leak nudes of her if she wasn't willing to, you know, do what she wanted her to do. And we see as the, rest of the season finale goes on, this happened to a lot of different people. And that's really when we get the initial theme of the season, which this season isn't just about how we put people into boxes. Sure, that's a big part of it, but it really is a commentary on, I think, our generation in general. How we long for social connection, but the only reason we do to go on the internet is because we want something out of it that we can't get in the real world. And we're willing to do anything just to impress upon someone, just for someone to, you know, finally be the one for us. Get that someone that finally respects us for who we are. And I think a lot of people do fall victim to this. And this is a very relevant message that I think is really great that American Vandal did dive deep into this. And especially when it comes to the character of Demarcus. Demarcus is someone who, like I said, he seemed to have it all. He seemed to be someone who was an athlete. You know, everyone seemed to respect him. He was good friends with everyone. He had all these privileges and things like that. But of course, then there was Lou, and Lou was someone who, was very much controlling him, who basically told him that this is what you're going to do in college, you don't really have another choice, and Demarcus was not okay with that. He really wanted to do what he wanted to do. He didn't want Lou to tell him what to do, and so there's that fantastic scene where we realize that this catfish, the same person that catfished Jenna, also catfished Demarcus, and Demarcus went along with it because it was the first person who didn't treat him like he was an athlete. They treated him like a normal person, and I just thought there was a really brilliant commentary on someone in Demarcus's position. There's so much pressure on him, he's treated as the athlete, and there's a lot to be expected out of him, and because of that, he really wants a break from it. He wants to be treated as someone who isn't nearly as popular. He wants to be treated as someone who is as unpopular as Kevin. That's really who he wants to be, and I really loved getting into that. I thought it was such a great plot point for Demarcus, and again, very relatable for a lot of people. But perhaps the most affected out of all of them is, of course, with Kevin. I loved where they ended up going with him, where essentially Kevin said that the reason that he, all this time we thought, oh, there's no way that he could have done the brownout. He gave all these reasons as to why he wasn't there. He didn't drink the lemonade. He was in the cafeteria. There was no possible way he could have done it. When it turns out the police officers were actually right. Kevin did, in fact, do the brownout, and this wasn't something that he was blackmailed to do. It wasn't like Demarcus and Jenna, where they sent a bunch of nudes, and that, they were going to leak them if he didn't do it. No, he actually wanted to do it. Why? Because, again, he was willing to do anything for this fictitious girl that he really cared about, and there's that fantastic scene where he talks about how even though he knew that she wasn't real, he felt that connection there. He goes as far as to wait for this date with her, and she never shows up, and it's devastating to think about, but it recontextualizes everything we thought we knew about the Kevin character in a way that Season 1 with Dylan truly didn't, because we knew in Season 1 that Dylan did not draw the dicks. We knew very early on that was the case, and we thought in Season 2 that Kevin was the innocent one, when it turns out he actually wasn't. He was very much, he very much went along with it. He was complicit in what happened, and I thought there was a very interesting direction for his character to go, because sure, you're on Kevin's side, but you also see that we kind of have been victimizing him just a little bit too much this season. He hasn't been exonerated because he did in fact commit the crimes that he was accused of, and I thought that was a very interesting story overall. And then of course you factor into who ends up doing all of this, which this was a very interesting reveal, because similar to Season 1, they give us a lot of things in the background that we don't really focus on a ton. And eventually, they do in fact come to fruition, which is why I think it was a very smart choice to not really focus on Grayson Wentz a lot. We briefly heard about him, that he was this kid that was expelled from school. He went on the internet for going too far and putting a bunch of stuff on there. And he has been expelled from, from school ever since. And when we eventually get into why he's doing this, he actually does make a very good point, that people often, they pretend to be someone they're not on the internet. We put masks on our face because we try to hide who we really are from that individual. We try to do, basically whatever that individual wants us to do, going as far as to do things that we wouldn't normally want to do. We really do push ourselves in every way, really defying our limits, and I think it's a very interesting way of looking at things, and I like that in the end of this, Peter doesn't totally dismiss what, Grayson is actually saying, because he does actually have a point here. Now, sure, he went about it in completely the wrong way. I mean, he basically, he was catfishing all these students, and he had all these news from them, and he clearly was trying to prove that everyone was, quote-unquote, full of shits, and the way he was doing this was by, by having all these poop crimes and things like that, which is a very interesting way of doing it overall. But just like Peter, I think he does actually make a very good point, where sure, this is what people do. They do try to get something on the internet that they can't get out of social interactions, when they've forgotten that those social interactions are what truly matter. Those social interactions, whether they be, on camera or in real life, those are the people that really matter, because they are the people that know who you are when you take that mask off. They are the people who knew who you are when you no longer are hiding yourself. And I think it's a very effective message for not just teens, but pretty much everyone. I mean, the internet is so commonplace nowadays that we don't really know how to use it. We kind of use it to a big disadvantage. We always seem to use it in a negative aspect. And what I liked about this season is that it wasn't trying to use the internet in a negative connotation. It actually was showing how great the internet can be, but that we just need to use it a little bit better, and that we as humans are just very impulsive in that way, where again, we will just do whatever that person wants us to do. We won't really think about ourselves, and I think it's just a very interesting message overall. And the way that we're able to do this through something as stupid as someone getting everyone to defecate by drinking lemonade, I think is awesome. I love how the show is able to do this, and to me, it makes the show even smarter than it was in Season 1, and that's something that I really did love about overall. I think it's such an effective ending, and again, it continues to show how this is easily one of the smartest shows on TV. Again, I can't really believe I'm saying that with this show, but it really does ring true here. It is a very intelligent show that really does understand how teens, but also this generation in general, functions and thinks, and I think this final episode in general, that has never been proven more than this final episode that we do get here, which I truly do think is maybe the most effective episode of the entire show, just by showing who these people actually are, rather than the mask that they do try to hide from society, rather than the mask that they try to hide from their computer. This is showing who they actually are, why they actually wanted to go along with these crimes. And I think it's just a very interesting story overall that the show honestly did top from its first season, which I honestly thought was kind of impossible. So overall, American Vandal Season 2 is a fantastic season that, again, really does explore the social generation in a way that I really haven't seen on other TV. It has deeper characters, it has a much more complex story going on here, and it really does not take you in the direction you think it's going to. Sure, on the surface, it does seem really silly. It does seem like there's no possible way you can actually take this seriously, but somehow it does actually work. Somehow you really do get wrapped up in the mystery, and the way things do conclude, it actually is incredibly satisfying. 2 seasons in, and I can't wait to see where else the show is really going to go. I really do hope they get that Season 3, because I am so excited to see what else the show can tell about this social generation. They seem to have a very interesting way of, giving the social commentary, not beating you over the head with it, and doing it in a way that is very sincere, but also doing it in a way that relays the message to you in a way that other shows simply can't. And I really do love the way the show is able to do that. It really just is that one glaring flaw of the 2 characters not having as much to do this season that really does hold this show back from topping the first one. If it hadn't been for that, this would have easily topped the first season for me, but unfortunately, it just didn't get there. I still really do love this season a lot. I think this is still one of the best shows that Netflix has going on right now, and I'm definitely going to give American Vandal Season 2 a very deserving A-. Like I said, guys, if you are not watching this show right now, you are doing yourselves a huge disservice. I know BoJack Horseman was something that a lot of people loved, and trust me, definitely something to watch. But once you're done with BoJack Horseman, watch this show. It is of the highest recommendation. It continues to astound me how Funny or Die is able to put out something this smart and clever that still is a lot of fun, for sure. Like, it definitely is very funny, but it has something to say about, like I said, teens in general that other shows just simply don't want to dive into, and I think this show just does such a great job with that. But that's really it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this season overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.